Welcome to Mindfucks with Mahara, where we flip your perspective, challenge your thinking, and leave you feeling surprisingly amazing about it all. I'm your host, Mahara, and this podcast is for the rebels ready to rage against their comfort zone, for those willing to flip their finger at mediocrity and sit in the fire of discomfort, knowing that's where the magic happens. Each episode, I'll share insights that might just blow your mind in the best possible way. So if you are ready to have your world rocked and your thoughts rewired, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, truth seekers, to another episode of Mindfucks with Mahara. I'm Mahara Wayman, and today we're diving into something that's going to flip your whole perspective on its head. We're talking about your inner critic. Now, before you roll your eyes and go, oh my God, Mahara, not another episode about my inner critic. I promise you, you've never heard it discussed like this before. And here is my truth bomb for today. What if, and stay with me here, what if your inner critic isn't your enemy? What if that voice you've been trying to silence for most of your life is actually clarity wearing a mask? Mind blown yet? Okay, I know this is as controversial as hell. In a world of love and light and positive vibes only, suggesting we should listen to our inner critic is kind of like bringing a knife to a meditation circle, but that's exactly why we need to talk about it. Okay, and trust me, I get why this may sound crazy. I was deep in the spiritual bypass trenches myself, and I want to share something really personal with you. For years, I was the queen of critic silencing techniques. Seriously. Meditation, check. Been doing it for over 40 years. Affirmations, oh my God, me and Louise Hay, best friends. Yes, done that. Positive self-talk mantras all the time. Honestly, I feel like I have had them tattooed on my soul. And yet, that critical voice kept coming back, stronger and louder than ever before. Now, my real breakthrough came during a particularly, shall we say, brutal bout of self-criticism about my business. My inner critic was going off about how I wasn't doing enough, serving my clients deeply enough, earning enough, just all in all, not freaking enough. And my first instinct, as per usual, was to shut it down with some I am enough mantras. I matter. I'm enough. But something made me pause and actually listen. And holy shit, guys, when I really listened, I realized the voice wasn't trying to tear me down. It was highlighting exactly where I needed to grow. And that's what I talk about now quite a bit, is when we are brave enough to listen a little bit differently to our quote inner critic, she can become our divine guide. Okay, that moment for me changed everything, because really, here's the thing. When I stopped fighting my inner critic and flipping the bird and calling her a bitch, I started to get radically curious about its message, her message, I should say. She wasn't just speaking, she was revealing a blueprint for my next level of growth. Mind blown, seriously. And that's why we need to explore this topic and what I like to think of sort of tongue in cheek as the inner critic clarity revolution. Me and my little cheesy names, right? But first, let's get real about why we are so quick to silence our inner critic. And really, I think this will sound familiar to you all. We've all been taught that any form of criticism is an attack, right? And it doesn't feel good. I get it. It's uncomfortable. So often we silence valuable feedback. But when we do that, we are bypassing an amazing opportunity for growth. I know it's tough. Believe me, I'm almost 60 and I'm just figuring this out like fairly recently. But when we do that, we also may be ignoring what might be divine guidance in disguise, all because we're just too afraid to face that critical voice. And I'm going to encourage you to be courageous as fuck. Here's where it gets juicy, though. I want to show you what happens when we silence our critic without listening, right? This is what I've been doing most of my life. Every time you shut down that voice without getting curious about its message, you're missing crucial insights. It's kind of like having a GPS system, but putting on noise canceling headphones so you actually don't hear when it tries to warn you about a wrong turn. Can you imagine? Yeah, that would be dumb. You end up bypassing how to get to where you want to go. You end up bypassing what may be the real issue behind a challenge. You end up stagnating in comfort. I used to talk about this earlier. The comfort zone is not where you want to stagnate, right? You don't want to live there. You also end up ignoring the very guidance that could seriously catapult you to the next level of growth or the next level of happiness or the next level of success, whatever it is that you're looking for. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jesus, Mahara, this sounds great in theory, but how do we know when to listen and when to tell that voice to, shut the F up? Well, I'm so glad you asked. This is where deep courage and clarity comes in. I want you to picture this. What if every criticism became guidance? What if? One of my favorite questions to my clients, what if? What if every trigger became a teacher? What if every doubt became direction? Does it sound impossible? Some of you are probably going, yeah, it does. But stay with me because I'm about to show you exactly how to make the shift with what I call divine protocol. Okay, we start with the sacred listen. This is where we get real curious and maybe a bit of a detective of your own internal dialogue. So instead of immediately shutting down your critic, you start to notice its timing. When does it speak up? What triggers it? What's the energy behind the words? Start paying attention and tracking these patterns because they're leaving you breadcrumbs to your breakthrough. Promise, swear to God. Then we move into what I call message mining. This is where the real alchemy happens. You're going to separate emotion from information. I know, right? What a concept. You want to extract the core message and identify the growth opportunities that are hidden in that criticism. I want you to think of it like panning for gold. You have to sit through a whole bunch of dirt to find the precious metals. And one way that you can do this, I mentioned the separate emotion from information, is recognizing that it's okay to have the emotions, right? That's what makes you human. But you don't have to live there and you don't have to create a story from the emotion. Because when you create a story, then it feels real, right? So, real quick example, you may have screwed up at work and you feel like an idiot, you feel foolish, right? It's okay to feel that way, right? But you don't need to make it your truth. It's okay to feel foolish, but that doesn't mean that you are foolish or a loser or not enough. It's okay to feel embarrassed or shamed or frightened, but that doesn't make you less than. So, learning to separate emotion from truth is a huge component of being a badass. And it really does help when we are listening to our inner critic. Okay, this is where most people stop. And that's why they get stuck, right? They feel the emotion, they create a story, they feel like shit. The final piece in this little puzzle is, and this is very crucial, this is when you allow yourself to tack on to my last episode, you give yourself permission to integrate all of that wisdom because getting the message is only half the battle. I know, right? Awareness is great, but that's only half the battle. You have to turn that criticism into action steps, those triggers into transformational tools, and all that bloody doubt into direction. I challenge you. I challenge you to take that on. You know what? This whole process reminds me of that friend who tells you you've got spinach in your teeth before you're making a presentation. Oh my God, has that ever happened to you? In the moment, you might feel like an ass, embarrassed, maybe angry, but really, they've just saved you from walking into a room full of people looking like you've just, munched out on a garden. So thank them, right? Thank them. Okay, before we wrap this up, we need to talk about some uncomfortable truths because, I'm all about being real here. This isn't all sunshine and spiritual rainbows. It just isn't. Not all criticism is divine guidance. Sometimes a critic is just being an asshole, and that can be you as well. You're going to need to develop what I like to think of as divine discernment. Some messages will be very hard to hear because growth isn't always comfortable. Most importantly, remember that, first of all, you can handle discomfort. You're a courageous bitch. You've done this before. But what's the next step? Remember that change requires action. It's not just insight. So don't be afraid to take it to the next level. The key is learning to distinguish between toxic criticism and transformative feedback. It's kind of like developing a spiritual spam filter, right? You need to know what's junk mail and what's an important message for your soul. And the only way to do that is to be courageous enough to get curious. So, folks, it is time to stop silencing your inner critic and start getting radically curious about its message. If you're ready to transform your critic into your clarity compass, I mean, really ready, and I'm not just screwing around here, head over to my website, www.mindfulnesswithmahara.com, to book your free alchemy activation session. Because here's the ultimate truth. Sometimes the voice you're trying to silence is the exact wake-up call that you have been waiting for, that your soul has been waiting for you to recognize. That criticism that you're running from, it might just be clarity in disguise. And your inner critic, she might actually be your inner oracle wearing a really bitchy costume. What do you think? Could be. This is Mahara Wayman reminding you that when you change how you hear the message, even your harshest critic can become your most powerful guide. Have a great week. I'll see you later.